There you go. Okay, so welcome to this incredibly exciting. We're literally just buzzing with energy, so hopefully it's going to be quite infectious. We are doing an amazing workshop tonight. I don't honestly think I've ever seen a workshop where we've got branding, marketing, and mindset all combined into one session. So I'm feeling a little bit excited about this. And the reason why we've created this in the first place, of course, is because over the past 20 years of working in this industry, I really see these areas as being the keys to success. And I can see over those years, I've seen consistency, communication, clarity, all these things we're going to talk about, just keep on coming back for the people that are doing incredibly well. And obviously we want everybody who has their author goals and their, amazing writing skill to be able to have the chance to achieve that potential and get what they want. Why should we not? And so there are secrets to success, frankly, and we're going to try and unravel some of them. And there is no one size fits all rule either. So, at any point, if you think, oh my God, this is not for me, what's she talking about? Don't panic, it's fine. I would recommend you have a paper and a pen ready if you're old school. If you're not, then, grab your tablet, grab whatever. There we are, Helen's with it. I'm paper and pen kind of girl. So here I am. So yes, I am going to quickly introduce myself, and then Alex is going to introduce herself, and then we're going to get straight into it because we've only got an hour and a half, and frankly, that's never really long enough when it involves me talking, because I do like to talk. And Alex is like, yes, I know you do. Okay, so I am obviously Helen Lewis. It says my name on the screen. I am the founder and director of LitPR, which is a book PR agency that's been around now for over a decade. And I've been working in publishing for a long time. I've been working in media before that as a journalist. So I've kind of seen both sides of the PR journalism thing. And I'm also a publisher. I also co-run a self-publishing company. I'm the co-founder of the Diverse Book Awards. So as you can guess, basically all roads lead to books. I'm basically a book geek, and I love books. And so I've made a living out of working with authors and working with books. And branding is something that I've become incredibly passionate about over the past 3 or 4 years, since becoming a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing and getting much more involved in the branding side of marketing. And it's just kind of awoken something in me, really. I absolutely love it. So there is a lot to share, and hopefully you'll all get a lot of great info from tonight. Just a little bit of housekeeping as well, that obviously we are very relaxed, Alex and I, and if you want to ask any questions by speaking or putting it in the chat, or however you want to do it, raising your hand, I don't know, whatever these formal things are that people do, but just basically just speak, and that's fine. And we will also have a Q&A at the end. Just gonna let someone else in, hang on a sec. We'll have a Q&A at the end as well, so if you want to sort of save up your questions and do it that way, that's fine. Or if you just think, what's she talking about, feel free to ask. So yeah, that's me. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much, Helen. Hi, ladies, lovely to meet you all, meet you. And yes, I am so excited. First and foremost, thank you, Helen, for having me here tonight. And I am a business and mindset coach and NLP practitioner. So my forte, if you like, is our mind, our mindset. I generally work with business owners, coaches, consultants, experts, helping them to not just fulfill their potential, but really, like, your business is only as good as your mindset. I think whatever kind of brand or business you're trying to build, it's only going to get to those heights if you allow and you think and really live into that potential. So yes, I think our minds are our greatest asset, and I'm here tonight to help to dig into some of what we feel are like the common writer's blocks, common areas where we start to doubt ourselves, doubt our ability. So yes, I'm very, very excited to be here with you all, and I think it's going to be a fabulous workshop.
Thank you. I should also say that Alex is now our official resident mindset coach at LitPR, so we're very excited to have her on board as part of the team. So I think mindset is, again, something that's quite overlooked in the whole author journey, and I think it's really, really important, because obviously there are lots of hurdles that come along and catch us by surprise. And I think if we can prepare ourselves a bit more for those, there's also this kind of thing where obviously if you're a writer, you're not always going to be the most confident person in the world. You don't always want to be, but in front of the screen, you sometimes want to be just behind it, typing away. And there's a sort of an assumption that, oh, you should be incredibly confident and you should be able to do all these speaking gigs and you should do this, that and the other. And that's just not really that realistic for most people, is it? Let's face it. So, you know, I want to sort of be able to open people up to opportunities in their own comfort zone. I don't want people to feel uncomfortable by their process and their journey. So let's dig straight into it. Now, branding is one of those things where it's got like about a million definitions. So I'm just going to read you the definition that I believe is probably the closest to what I can see is, from my perspective, the definition, which is basically a person's perception of a product, service, experience, or organization. So from that perspective, a brand for you guys is somebody's perception of a product. So that's your book or books, and it's also their perception of their experience of communicating with you or connecting with you, and it's also the person's experience of you, basically. So there's more than just a product with an author. I believe you're really buying into the book and the author and not just one or the other. So typically I don't want to do things in a straightforward way. I want to jump to the end so that we can kind of start from the beginning. So if you could have a little think at the moment about how are you going to know when you've reached the end goal. Now, the reason why I ask this is because I've worked with over 400 authors now over the past 10 years, and every single one of them has a different set of goals that they want to achieve. They have a different sort of measure of success, okay? And if you think about what your measure of success is going to be, it will actually help you to work out how to get there. Because actually a lot of people don't think, well, you know, for me, I don't know, it might be that you want to get the bestseller status on Amazon. It might be that you want to sell 1 million books. It might be that you want to get a £100,000 deal. It might be that you want to change one person's life. It could be so many different things. It could be a combination of all of those, by the way. It doesn't have to be one. But the point is, unless you yourself know what success is going to look like, it's going to be that kind of never attainable goal, and you're going to find it pretty tricky to get there. There is no rule to this. You could have, like I say, 10 different goals. You could have one. It could be money driven. It could be that you want this book to work so that the next one is traditionally published by one of the big 5. That's great. But then think, well, what's after that? So don't just sort of stop at the next book. Think more longer term about where you want to go and what you would believe success would look like in that situation. And if there's anyone who wants to share what they feel, that would be really cool, because what you say might then inspire somebody else to aim for that as well. Does anyone feel brave enough?
Well, I do.
Yes.
Sort of. Okay. So
Well done,
I think I have 2 goals, because I just wrote this out the other day again. I want to help families who are experiencing the same journey that we experienced with my son, who was recovering, or has recovered from schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And the other goal is to help destigmatize schizophrenia, just to the general public.
So you see, when you get to the point where you feel like you've done those goals, you've achieved those goals, you're going to know that you feel you've got to where you want to be. But what's interesting about these goals is that there aren't any numbers attached to them, or do you know what I mean? This is you want to help people, basically. Your goal isn't to sell X number of copies or to be this best-selling author. So what I'm not saying you should, but what you could do is you could think, well, how many families do I want to reach and help? And when you say destigmatize, obviously I understand what that means, because we've already had a conversation as well. But what would that look like? How would you know when you've got to that? I'm not saying you have to answer it. I'm just playing devil's advocate and trying to make you think a little bit wider about how you can achieve that. Because once you've got the clarity on what your goals are, you're going to find it a lot easier to get there. For years, when I was building LitPR, for years, I didn't really understand what my goal was, if I'm honest. I was just kind of doing it and hoping for the best. And then I basically spent a long time working it out, and it took me ages. But ever since then, the light bulb switched on, and everything I've done since then has made sense to me. So it is really important, I think. And then we're going to talk about, so hopefully you've written down some goals. Then we're going to talk about a little bit about why you need a brand, because a lot of people, I'm assuming that if you're here, you kind of believe you need one, or at least that you need to consider how to get one, which is half the battle. But the reason why people like yourselves need some kind of brand is not that you need some kind of all singing, all dancing, perfect logo and everything to be perfect and look amazing. It's more about, like I say, just getting clarity around what your goals are and then communicating those, and the experience that people have when you're communicating those. So the main reason why somebody needs a brand, if they're an author, is because if they don't have one, no one's going to know about you beyond your immediate network. Because a brand isn't just, like I say, a logo. It's about how you communicate. It's what you're saying to people. It's where the book can be bought from. It's how people can access you online. It's that whole experience and perception of experience. And it's not just people in general. I've actually broken it down to readers, literary agents, publishers, journalists, people who organise events in literary festivals. You know, there's so many different people that we need to kind of reach. And if you don't have a brand, it's really tricky to reach them because there's so many books being published and it's so busy and noisy. So if you have an author brand, then you're going to have much better discoverability and visibility. And then I truly do believe that you can then fulfill your author potential by having that brand in place. Okay, I am going to pause to breathe for a second before we move into the main part of this, which is the author brand framework, and I'm going to run you through that. Has anybody got any questions? Does anybody want to say anything at this point? Please do, so I can have a drink and pause. Save me.
Can I ask a question? Oh,
sorry, Natalie. Lots of people talking.
Sorry, go ahead, Natalie. Just wanted to say hello.
Hello. Hi, Clara.
Hello.
Hi there, Clara. I wasn't sure who was speaking then. Yeah, thank you. No, I was just going to ask, sometimes when you think of a brand, if you've got different hats, I sometimes find that it's how do you bring them all together? Because you might have your business hat, your book hat, then there's you. And it's like, that's the bit that can be tricky for me. I wonder if you've got any perspective on that.
Well, I mean, oh, absolutely. I mean, the main thing is, you know, is there alignment between the brands? And obviously with you, there is. I think if you were a psychologist, like say a clinical psychologist, and you specialised in mental health, and your book was a beach read about a holiday romance, boy meets girl, they have a couple of problems and then they float away into the sunset, it would be difficult to align those brands because they're not necessarily, they don't make much sense as a pairing. So what I would suggest to that person is you need to be really focusing on two brands. So you've got your clinical psychology brand, which is I help people with mental health problems or whatever. And then you've got your I'm a beach read, easy beach read rom-com person. And I think they would be two different brands. But if you've got alignment between business, book, and what you believe in, then they all form a nice cohesive whole, I believe. And so you could build it around you. So it's your brand. And then you've got these different things underneath it. So under your brand, you've got the business, and then you've got the book, and then you've got potentially some other services. And so it all comes underneath that brand. So as long as it makes sense and it's authentic, then I think you should be okay with building the brand around you.
Right, got you. That's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Alex, do you have anything to add around that? Because I feel like that's quite a mindset thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny as you were talking, because I've gone through a similar experience, like building my business as well. And I think that it's great advice what you said about kind of remembering that you can be your own brand and have those different compartments, different areas, if you like. I think I fell into the trap of trying to have like my business as the brand, and I tried to fit into that, and that just never works. It's got to start with you first. And I think our brands and our businesses and everything we do should be an extension of us rather than that kind of reversal, which is where we find ourselves often trying to put ourselves in a box or fit somewhere where we don't feel is right. So yeah, that's
so true. Yeah, so it needs to start from you rather than the brand. And like you say, you trying to fit into the brand and shoehorn yourself in, you're going to feel lost, I think, if you do that. I mean, anybody who's written a book and put all that work into writing a book, and so much work that goes into writing a book, I feel like you've already kind of, you know, a lot more about yourself than perhaps somebody who is just, and I say just flippantly, but just building a business. Because when you could literally just build a business tonight. You could just literally get a website and kind of go, right, tonight I'm going to set up this business and it's going to do X, Y, Z. Whereas with a book, it does, no one can write a book in one evening. So you put so much love and sweat and tears and money and time into the creation of a book that already you're sort of building your brand already at that point, even of writing the book. You're already sort of building that brand. So I think it's just being aware of which bits to pull out of that and to use in the brand, and hopefully I'll be able to help you with that in a minute. So does anybody else have any other thoughts or questions at this stage?
Yeah, I was interested that you were saying that you need a brand for going to publishers and literary agents, because I was thinking more of, you need a brand for self-published books, because I've got self-published books, but I'm also hoping to get a traditional book deal. And I was sort of thinking the branding would fit with the self-publishing. And whereas if I had a traditional publishing deal, that would be up to the publisher, and I wouldn't be selling myself to them with a brand. I'd just be selling my manuscript.
Well, what is your genre that you're writing in, Sally? Are you fiction or non-fiction?
Fiction mostly.
So, I mean, the agents that I've spoken to, I speak to a lot of agents all the time, and a lot of them, all of them that I've ever spoken to have always said that if you're non-fiction, it's just as much about the brand and the sort of network and the credibility and the kudos as it is about the actual book itself. Okay, but in fiction, obviously they like to think, and they do say that the book obviously should speak more than the person. However, I have also seen that the people who have done incredibly well, and I can't give, I was hoping it would have been announced by now, but it hasn't. But somebody that I've been working with for quite a long time has just got a very big book deal, and we're talking a 6-figure deal with a big traditional publishing house, and they have worked really hard. They're fiction writers, and they've worked really hard at building their brand. And I know that the fact that they have this brand has made such an impact, in getting that publishing deal in the first place. Well, first of all, getting the agent, then getting the publishing deal, and then getting a deal that big. In fact, they actually said pretty much those words, you know, we're so impressed by what you've done, by what you've achieved, your network, the power of your brand, the power of your experience, or what you're bringing to the table, I think was the words they used. So I know it can make a difference. So yeah, there are always going to be the examples where the agent and the publisher just absolutely fall in love with the book, and they fall in love with the writing, and that's enough. But given that there are about 250, I think they said the other day, Alice, didn't they, 250 agents, and in the UK, and on average they take 3 to 4 people a year. I mean, the numbers aren't amazing, and therefore you kind of want to do all you can to make yourself stand out. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need this perfectly curated brand. It just means that they know that you're aware of the power of the brand, and that's why, you know, if you boil it right down to the most basic, that's why people like reality TV stars get book deals when they've just come out of Love Island, because they know that at that point their brand is worth enough for them to invest in. It's nothing to do with with who they are, or how talented they are at writers. You know, it's all about the brand. So yeah, it's a kind of a bit of both, I think it's fair to say, for fiction. And I also think that it when you said about the publishers, that's what they would do. They definitely do like to have quite a lot of input into the direction that an author will go into, which is why when you hear about authors that sign multiple book deals, so, you know, they'll sign a 3-book deal, the reason why the publisher has bought them for 3 books is because they want to invest in that author and make them kind of the voice of whatever genre, or, you know, the poster person for that type of book, and they don't want you to build up the brand using all of their skills and their advertising and their all this stuff and then just bugger off and and use it elsewhere. They want to keep you and for as long as they can and build the brand over the long term. So yeah, there's a lot to it. But if you are looking at building an author brand because you're actually doing the self-publishing and the traditional publishing, that to me is the perfect route. I always say to people, don't do one or the other, do both if you can, because you've got the control over self-publishing and it opens up loads of doors for you. And then you've got the traditional publishing, which you kind of pass over to them and they manage it. And it's a very different experience. But you get to see both parts of the world, then the publishing world, and I think that's a really good way of doing it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have any questions? Or shall I just jump straight into the right? Okay, I'm going to jump straight in. So I've been working on this for a long time, and this is the first time I've ever shared this with anybody other than the team and a couple of my very close author clients. So I'm really intrigued as to how you think this is, what feedback you're going to give me on this. But you are the first people to have this experience. So buckle up. Here we go. Okay, so it's the 10 C's. Okay, because obviously this is me. I'm not going to do like 3 C's. It's obviously going to be 10, right? And I will send you a list of all these. You don't have to write this down if you don't want to. But what I think is probably not a bad shout is if you just maybe answer a couple of the questions that I'm going to throw at you, or if you just maybe write a couple of words down that resonate in particular, because it's like when you kind of go back over things, you're thinking, what was that one? So the first of the 10 C's is create. And the reason why it's the first one is because as an author, you are like the absolute pro when it comes to creation. The fact that you're writing something or you've already written something means that you can create magic on a page. And we're going to talk about mindset and your belief in yourself around the whole kind of ability to create. But, you've done it already, so you need to believe in yourselves. And obviously what we're here to talk about is creating a brand. So I do believe that if you've managed to create a book, then I think you're more than capable of creating a brand. But it's also worth thinking about other things that are worth creating. So, for example, what would your sort of mission statement be? And I think with Linda, she's already touched upon that. In a way, her mission statement is kind of like her goal. Her mission statement is her goal. And that probably will be quite similar for a lot of you. You'll probably be able to see that there's resonance between the goals that you wrote down earlier and what your mission is. And if not, maybe you need to have a look at trying to sort of align those a bit more. But there's so much creativity involved in just being an author. And that's why this is the first step, because I really think people need to embrace fully that they are creatives. So a lot of people I work with are like, oh, I'm not really very creative, or I'm not really an author. It's like, but you've written a book and you're published. What are you talking about? Or, even if you're not published, you've still written a book, or you're writing a book. So therefore, yeah, you're an author. I think the problem that I've seen over the past decade is that people can get a bit distracted by this part, because there's 2 things. First of all, obviously, the writing of the book is so fun and lovely, and we all want to write the next book. But actually, there's also that kind of distraction of, but hang on, I've got to do the marketing, and I've got to talk to this person, and I've got to do this, and blah, blah, blah. So you can kind of get distracted by the bit that you love, which is the writing, because that's why you're an author. But I've also seen people get distracted by content creation for social media or for blogs and they just go off on this tangent of, oh, I'm going to do a 10-part series of blogs and and before they know it, they've done nothing else. They haven't written a book. They haven't done the next chapter. They've just kind of got so distracted by the content creation. So I think, from talking as one person who gets very easily distracted to potentially another, try and stay focused, and that again goes back to what are your goals, and try and stay on track. Try not to get distracted by the next shiny thing, which is definitely me, and I'm sure some of you can kind of get that. So the first one's create. The second one is clarity. So clarity, I think, is so important, because you need clarity of vision. It's why we started with identifying the author goals. And if you don't know kind of what you stand for, or what you're, you know, even down to if you don't know what genre your book's in and you don't know who your audience is, then you're going to struggle, because the narrative that you're putting out is going to get confused and muddled. So if you've got clarity about who your reader is, what your goals are, what your genre is, why you're writing, then all of those messages will translate so much clearer to the potential reader, or whoever this potential stakeholder is that you want to appeal to. And again, I've seen that there's some really confusing mixed messages put out there by authors, and I think that's not them just, you know, deliberately doing it. I think it's because they're just struggling themselves to have clarity over what it is that they want to do. Do you want to just be a children's picture book author, or do you want to be a wider sort of children's author across middle grade and children, young children? Is your target audience very much only the preschool years? If you can get clarity on the niche and the targeting, you're going to find everything else is a lot easier. And also, don't worry if you don't get clarity from the get-go and you think, oh God, I can't change this now. I've done this. I've said I'm going to do this. Therefore, I've got to do it for the rest of my life. That's not the case. And I think it's just about trying to be as aware as you can about what your goals are and what you want to be known for, but don't stress about it. Don't make yourself unhappy by saying, well, I said I was going to do this, so I can't do anything else now. You know, life's too short for that. But clarity does help. Number 3, confidence. And this one's all about mindset, so I'm not going to go too far into it. But for me, I find that a lot of the authors I work with are not confident at all. They're not confident in their ability as a writer. They're not confident that somebody's going to want to read their book. And then some complete idiot, and that's maybe impolite, will come along and they'll say something horrible to them on social media, or they'll say leave a bad review on Amazon, and that's it. It all crumbles. And I have, you know, talked people through, you know, on the phone at night time through reviews. Don't worry about last night. Honest to God, last night somebody sent me an email saying, I can't believe this person has not only left a bad review, but she's also going on to Twitter, and whenever anyone said something about this book, they've said, I wouldn't bother reading this, which is awful. Can you imagine? It's just awful. So obviously I was talking to her about it, and we've, you know, and what I've done is I've said, right, first of all, remove yourself from social media for a bit. You don't need to see that for the next 24 hours. Second of all, I've gone on there and I've posted and I've said, look, I don't think this is very ethical, you know. So I've kind of waded in, but as a third party, so it's nothing to do with that author. Funny enough, they've stopped posting about it now. And I've just said, look at all the other amazing reviews you've got. This is one person who clearly this is more about her than it is about you, and more about her than it is about your book, but still, obviously, completely knocked her for 6. And I think, I'm not saying that if she was super confident that wouldn't have happened. Of course, that still would have happened and it wouldn't have been nice. But she would have been able to say the stuff that I said to her to herself. And I think then she probably would have slept better last night, bless her. So yeah, I mean, there's always going to be the absolute idiots, but there are plenty of strategies around, and Alex has got loads that can help you with those situations when something happens. Because I always say that if your book hasn't got a bad review, well, I'm not sure it's been read by enough people yet, as awful as that sounds, because no book is going to be loved by everybody. There is going to be somebody out there who doesn't like your book, and that's horrible, but it's true. And that's okay, because not everyone has to like your book. It's not for everybody. So that's quite a hard one. And I think that's something that's really important. Number 4 is Captivate. So, you know, that sort of thing when someone walks into a room and it's just like, everyone looks at them, but they haven't even said anything. And you're like, oh, I want to be that person. Do you know what I mean? That's how I feel anyway. That's obviously just letting you know a bit too much. But you kind of know about them, even though they haven't said anything. Like, that is basically, to me, that's all about presence. And that's not saying you have to be that person. I'm just saying, let's look at what they do and how they do it. And is there anything we can take from that makes us feel a bit more confident and a bit more present in a situation? So I think it's also about non-verbal cues. It's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it and how you present yourself and show up. So that's online and in person, in emails and conversations, at events, social media. That could even be as as minor as, do you have at the bottom of your email something that says about your book? Author of, you don't have to necessarily have a buy here, but I mean, it's not that bad an idea. But, you know, do you show up as an author? Do people know that you're an author on social media? Do people know that you're an author on emails? When somebody introduces you, would they say, oh, this is Helen and she's written a book about blah, blah, blah? I think it's, you know, it's one of those things, again, it's like a sort of a self-limiting thing of, well, why would anyone say that? Well, but why wouldn't they? You know, it's that kind of thing about how to captivate someone. And then number 5 is communicate, which I think, again, there's an assumption that if you can write, you can communicate really well. And I don't think that's necessarily true. And I think that comes back to confidence. So you're obviously really good at writing. So you can obviously communicate a story or a message, but there's more to it. So for example, you might want to be the person who gets to speak at speaking gigs. You might not. The thought of speaking at a speaking gig is horrendous. I was asked the other day in a room, who here wants to speak in speaking gigs? And I was just like, oh, no, it sounds awful. Who wants to be interviewed by journalists and appear on podcasts or maybe even host a podcast? I don't know. What is it you want to do, basically? And then think about, well, how's that going to help? And how can your communication skills really help with that and elevate that goal? I think a lot of people do want to do those things, but it's okay as well that a lot of people don't want to do those things. And if you don't want to be center stage, that's fine. But on social media, for example, you kind of do need to communicate, because otherwise you're missing out on a massive marketing opportunity there. So if you can communicate well on social media, that's brilliant. No one's saying you have to be like the best communicator across everything and be the sort of TEDx speaker, unless you want to be, and that's great. But I think it does kind of bring us back to step 2, which is clarity, and just having that sort of clear vision on what your narrative is and what you're trying to get across to people. And this is for fiction and non-fiction writers. And then connect. So how do people connect with you? So number 6 is connect. So if, again, what I've seen over the past 10 years is if somebody who's an author has written a book, but there is no other way to connect with that author than via that book, then that limits where else they can go. So just imagine if a literary festival organizer reads your book or hears about your book and then they can't find you on social media, you haven't got a website, they can't work out what your email address is. So why not just make it super easy for somebody to knock on your door and say, would you like to do this? Would you like to do that? I mean, because if you don't open yourself to these things, then it's going to be tricky for them to ever offer you that. There's other things you can do to connect with people that helps, I think, build a brand. And that's stuff like engaging better and optimally on social media. So not just pushing content out, but actually engaging with other people's posts, engaging with comments on your posts. It's about reviewing other people's books. So on Goodreads, for example, you could review some books and tag that author, and then they could come around and go, oh, I'll read your book and review that. And then before you know it, you've got a few people reading your book and reviewing it, and all because you've just done that for one person is kind of coming back at you. And then it's a good idea to think, who do you connect with and how does your brand connect you to those readers? So does your brand sort of show that you are open for conversation, and do you like to talk about specific subjects, or are you open to having questions sent to you about certain things, or what parts of you are you sharing? You don't have to share all parts, you don't have to share everything. You choose what it is you want to share, and then you share it and you connect with people that way. Number 7 is cultivate. Because I really mean here relationships, so cultivating relationships, which is so important. Basically, my whole business is built on relationships. So relationships with authors, relationships with journalists, relationships with publishers, agents, booksellers. It's all around relationships, and that's exactly what building a brand is all about. It's building relationships and cultivating that. So maybe have a think about who it is you would like to have a better relationship with. So if you're going down the traditional publishing route, you probably want to have a better relationship with literary agents. You probably want to cultivate a better relationship with traditional publishers that are open to unsolicited manuscripts, which means that they aren't just open to literary agent submissions. Do you want to connect and cultivate relationships with journalists and get more media opportunities? Perhaps you want to cultivate relationships with booksellers so that they can, next time they're doing a panel event or they're looking for local authors, they're going to come straight to you because they know that you're a nice person to work with. And then you need to think about how you can build those relationships authentically for the long term. So none of this is like short term, quick goals, easy wins. It's all about building a credible brand over time. So cultivating also relates to cultivating a credible brand over time. And then number 8 is collaborate, which again is a massive part of any business, I believe. And you're in the business of being an author. So partnerships, relationships, joint ventures, collaborations, they all open the door to some new experiences and some new opportunities that could be the next thing that is like going to make your life completely different and amazing. And obviously some work better than others, but a great idea about a collaboration, for example, is when you see a panel of authors. So you've got at a festival or at a bookshop event, you've got like 3 or 4 different authors, and they've actually put themselves together. They haven't been chosen by that festival and then put together. They've actually gone, right, here's what we're doing. We're 4 authors. We bring this, and this. And this is what we want to bring to your bookshop event, or we want to bring to your literary festival event. It's very unusual that the organisers get that level of kind of on a plate. This is amazing. Why don't you have us? But when I see that happen, it works so well. And it's because the authors have collaborated. They know their unique strengths. And together, they've got this amazing kind of unique proposition. So there's probably at least another 2 or 3 authors out there who might not be doing something exactly the same as you. You don't really want them to be doing something exactly the same as you, but it would make sense if you collaborated with them. And, you know, you're stronger when you're with more people, definitely in the book world, especially because it's quite a lonely place. And it will make you stand out if you do put together some kind of, you know, if you do want to speak at literary festivals, for example, if you do put together a panel event where there's 4 of you and you all work well together. I've seen that work really well. And it's something that it's just a tried and tested thing, really. So you could have a think about who it is that you could team up with. You might not even know them yet. LinkedIn would be a great place to start with this. Twitter also, because Twitter's the place where authors are. And then number 9 is the crew. So CREW. So this really does have to follow steps 7 and 8. So you've got to cultivate relationships. You've got to collaborate with other people. And then you're going to start to build this crew or community, however you want to call it. But really here, it's not just about who's in your crew and who's on your side. It's actually about how do you keep them happy? So it's about keeping engaged with them. So you don't want to kind of get, for example, a mailing list. Authors are always told, get a mailing list, right? And then I've seen so many authors spend so much time and money building a mailing list and then just kind of running out of steam and then not sending anything to them for like a year because they're just, what do I send? I don't want to, and then it just drops off the radar. But you've got to kind of engage with that crew that you've spent all that time working on. Otherwise, it's a bit pointless, which is easy to say, I know, and everyone gets distracted by many things, but it's quite difficult to get that balance right in terms of how regularly to communicate with people. But I think, yeah, try, if you, for example, with the mailing list, try and mail them once a month and stick to once a month. You don't want to spam them, but at the same time, you kind of do need to remind them that you're there. And then the last one is consistency. And this is so important, especially when it comes to being an author and building a brand. So as I've said, we've worked with hundreds of authors, and I honestly think that this is the key differentiating factor between those that do really well and achieve their author goals and those that kind of don't, frankly. And it's because they get distracted, they don't give it enough time, they think that a brand's going to be built overnight, they're going to become the next bestseller overnight, and when it doesn't happen quick enough for them, they move on. And if something's really not working, obviously don't keep doing it because that doesn't make sense, but sometimes it takes a bit of a while to build up results. And actually, if you're very consistent in all the things that we've just said in terms of how much you're creating, that you've got clarity over your message, that you're building your confidence, that you know how to be present and what sort of presence you want to put out there, that you communicate across different spectrums, that you know how to connect and cultivate with people, connect with people and cultivate relationships, you know that collaboration is important, and you're working on getting some collaborations lined up. You've got a group of people, no matter how small, but they are engaged and they're loyal and they're shouting about you and your book to their friends. And if you keep being consistent, I honestly do think that it's going to pay off. And I do think you will reach your goal at the end of that process. That process might take you 6 months, it might take you a year, it might take you a decade. There is no rule as to how long this takes. But as soon as you get distracted and stop doing these things, that's when the wheels fall off, because no one else is going to ever shout about your book as proudly as you. So you need to be the one shouting from the front. And then people will join in because you're good at writing, and why would they not? So that was my pep talk. They were my 10 C's. Thank you, Alice. Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you. I felt a bit nervous sharing that because this is my brand that I'm sharing with you. And I'm like, if this is crap, what am I talking about? So this is kind of, it's laying it on the line a bit. I am going to hand over to Alex now. And unless anyone's got any questions, or if you want to share anything, we can talk about it at the end as well. It's entirely up to you.
I missed number 6.
You missed number 6. Number 6 is connect.
Oh.
I'll know this off the top of my head soon. I was trying to rehearse it so I'd know it, and I've let myself down there. So connect. So how do people connect with you? So it's the whole idea of, if you've only written a book and that's the only way people can get in touch with you, and you haven't even got like any information in the back of the book about where people find you, they will search your name on Google. And if nothing pops up, like a website, social media, articles, anything like that, then you're missing out on that potential connection. So there kind of always needs to be a next step from the book, because often if somebody's really bought into the book, they do want to find out more about the author. And I'm not saying they're going to start stalking you, but it kind of is a bit like that, isn't it? Because you do, if I really like a book, no matter if it's fiction or non-fiction, I do Google the author. And I often start following them on social media as well. So now I sound like a stalker.
I do the same.
Yeah, I do the same as well. If I, and I'm really disappointed if they're not on Twitter or something. Like I really like Leanne Moriarty.
Oh, so do I.
I love her books, and unless I'm just not looking in the right place, but I haven't found her. She's not on Twitter. How can she not be on Twitter? So yeah, and I'm kind of disappointed by that. It's ridiculous. I don't want to stalk her, but I just want to interact a little bit,
I think you kind of almost get to a point where you sort of like, dare I say, you get too big to care, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably.
When your books have been made into Netflix series and films and stuff, I suspect you don't really give a crap. But no. I do think that in the brand building process, to make it as easy as possible for somebody to find you is pretty important. And that is what brand building is. It's about making yourself more visible and more discoverable, because that opportunity then is going to get right on your door, and you're going to be the first person they go to. I don't know about you, but if I've ever really loved the book and then I've shared a review, or I've followed someone then commented, and then if they like me, like the comment, or they follow me back, I'm like, oh my god, yay! Like, it's a massive win, isn't it? So you just feel connected to that author.
Yeah. I mean, Marianne Keyes, for some unknown reason, followed me about a year ago.
Oh.
I know, and I was like, wow, I've made it.
Yeah, exactly. It makes you feel good. Yeah, it makes you feel good. So yeah, why not? Yeah. That was a good comment. Alex, do you wanna? Are
you ready for me to swing on in?
I feel like now's a really good time, because I feel like I've kind of touched upon confidence, but I don't want to go down that road, because obviously that's definitely your thing. And I think there's probably quite a few things within the 10 C's that would do with some mindset support, frankly.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okie dokie. So, I mean, this is mindset condensed on a massive level. So we're gonna look at 4 key areas, and I'm going to try and keep it to like 10 minutes per mindset like block or mindset area, let's say. If you do have questions, I mean, I love for it to be as interactive as we can. The more you can get involved, the more you can get out of it. If you have any questions, please just interject as you wish. That's fine. And yeah, we're going to be covering. So just to give you a clue as to what the agenda is for my kind of part of the workshop tonight, we're going to be looking at imposter syndrome. We're going to be looking at limiting beliefs. We're then going to have a little look at abundance versus scarcity mindset. And which kind of camp we really want to be more sat in when we're developing our author brand. And then we're going to finish with a biggie, I feel, is the fear of judgment. So yeah, we're gonna finish off with judgment this evening. So all really meaty topics. There's a lot we can talk about in each of them. But as I say, we're really just going to be kind of brushing the surface. I'd love for you all to have just more awareness of each of these areas, and also more self-awareness as to where we might talk about things that you resonate with strongly. And if anything does, like, please share that as we go, because I think often when we choose to share something, it's still quite interesting when we see other people maybe experiencing that same thing themselves, and have some insight they might want to share. So we will start with imposter syndrome, as I feel like it was the most prominent area that came up for me when I was thinking about authors and building that brand. So to start with, I suppose, does anyone already know what imposter syndrome is, or like to share in the chat box maybe what their perception of this term means? I have obviously got the textbook or my definition of it here, but I'd love to know if any of you are familiar with that topic already, or that feeling, should we say. I see some nods already there. And then Helen, thank you for starting us off, has said, yeah, feeling that you are not good enough is very much along the right lines here. If anyone else cares to share there. Helen, thank you, says feeling like you're going to be feeling like you're going to be found out. That's such a good example. Yeah, I love these, and they're very, very along the right lines of what we're going to be digging into. So I feel that when someone describes themselves as a writer or an author, similarly to someone being an expert, you get that feeling of like, oh, should I be saying that? Should I really be saying that? Does anyone find themselves saying like, I write, rather than I'm a writer, like not quite embodying what you actually do, like I am a writer, but yeah, I write sometimes, I'm not quite fully owning it. I think to really embrace like, I am an author, I am a writer, that's quite tough. It's quite hard to actually really step into that, because we feel a bit like that feeling of we're a fraud. Are we really? Am I allowed to say that? And this is the thing. Unfortunately, no one's going to come and hand you like this badge to say, there you go, you can call yourself a writer or an author now. Like, it's actually more, it's accepting yourself and owning and being like, yes, that is what I am. And it's hard because it starts from the inside. Like, it starts as an inside out job. And I feel like no matter how many books that you write, how much awards that you win, how many things that you do that would on paper say, oh, hey, I'm a writer, I'm an author, I think that it can be something, if we don't kind of own it and find ways to deal with it when it crops up, that can carry with us for our whole careers, like, if we're not super aware of that. So imposter syndrome in a nutshell is, as we thank you ladies as well who gave us those great examples there, it's a mental pattern of self-doubt. So it's like a nagging feeling in the back of your mind that if people looked really closely and they really investigated you, they'd realize that you had no idea what you were doing at all, not qualified to write. How dare you call yourself a writer or an author? And the worst thing is when we aren't fully aware of that imposter syndrome, like, we start to agree with those ideas. Like, we start to get on board with them and say, oh, well, actually, yeah, maybe I am a fraud or a hoax, or maybe someone is going to come and find me out that I'm doing this thing. So, and generally with writers particularly, it can be really paralyzing, to be honest, like, especially when you're starting out as well, when you don't have these professional accomplishments and things that you can kind of have to prove that you are, you know, the writer, the author. But like I said, this is really a mindset thing. It's all mindset. There's a commonly held perception that for some of us, I don't know who's kind of published, self-published, but there's a perception that, oh, hey, you're not a true writer unless you're a published one. You know, for people who think this way, self-publishing doesn't hold the same weight as getting a stamp of approval from a big publishing house. But the truth is, published, not published, you are a writer if you write. If you write and you're typing, you're writing words, you're getting your words onto a piece of paper or a document, you are a writer and you're allowed to own that. And also, I think when you're feeling like an imposter, you're probably subject to, you're constantly self-critiquing, probably excessive self-editing maybe, or just pure procrastination, which might be coming up for you as well. And all of these things can stop you becoming an engaged and honest storyteller, if you like. And that's a shame. Like, that's a travesty for your audience and the people that need to read what you have to say. So yeah, I really want for us just to dig into this a little bit more. Strategies for overcoming imposter syndrome. Now, I've tried to narrow these down to a few. As I said, I'm like itching to give everything to you tonight, but I'm trying to condense to what I feel are the most important ones. Now, does anyone describe themselves as an aspiring writer? I'm aspiring. Because if you do, I feel that can be one that is really going to hold you back with imposter syndrome, because every time that you say, I'm an aspiring writer, it's that same thing. Like, do you write? Yes. Okay. Well, you're a writer. You're not aspiring to write. You're actually like, you're writing now. And if you've ever written anything, you're a writer. So I think the word aspiring, if we are using it, and maybe we're not, if we are, I just want you to remove that from your vocabulary, and maybe any softening word that you could put before writing or author, or, you know, I do a bit of that, you know, sometimes it's that energy, that energetic shift between I try and I kind of do, but no, I am this. Like, standing strong and owning it is massive. The second thing I want for you to think about is, how often are you reviewing your progress? So how often are you taking a moment to look over like your body of work, look how far you've actually come in the process of doing this. And this applies to all of us. It doesn't matter whether you have been writing your whole life. It doesn't matter whether you picked up the pen or the laptop, whatever you write on a few years ago. It doesn't matter. So have a look at your journey. Have a look at how you've grown as a writer. Like, look back at the first bits of writing that you ever did. And you know what? Growth in any way, shape or form indicates that you are not a fraud. Like, you're not faking it till you're making it. Like, you are growing, you are developing along your journey and along your process. You're improving. If you've invested time and energy into perfecting your skills and improving and growing, that means that you are doing it, right? It's not just for show. See, Helen's just popped into the chat box. Is imposter syndrome, great question, more of a female problem, or do men tend to feel this too in equal measure? Statistically, and I've looked at this a lot in different mindset workshops that I have been part of, it is more female focused. It's something that females do suffer with more so, because generally we do care more about what others think. We do. And you might, I've read a really interesting study once that was like, when male and females applied for different job roles, like the women would always like undersell themselves massively and like, oh, am I being too much? Like, am I putting too much out here? Whereas the men would just say, oh, I haven't done that before. We'll just say I can do it. I'll learn, you know, and naturally men would get those kind of higher, bigger roles simply because they thought, yeah, I can do that. And women thought, I haven't done that before, so I'm not going to fully own that. And it's interesting the difference between the two. So yeah, it is generally more women who struggle with that. So yeah, good question. And if anyone's got questions as we go, please feel free to keep dropping them in. So we had taking aspiring out of our vocabulary, reviewing that progress and remembering that you're growing, you're evolving as you're going is a really, really healthy thing to do to help to deal with imposter syndrome. The third thing is, know that you're not alone. like, you are not alone. Like, and I hope that I've kind of got that across tonight, is you're not going to be the only author or writer that feels at times like they are a fraud. Like, it's going to happen. Like, that's going to come up. It's not about saying I'm never going to have imposter syndrome. It's becoming really aware of it as a thing and knowing how to then deal with that. Like, as I say, most authors do feel that imposter syndrome strike at some point. It's not something completely unique. And actually that takes so much power away from it when we go, okay, this isn't only me experiencing this. This is a really, really common thing that comes up. It's quite comforting, isn't it, to know that? So third thing is knowing that you're not alone. And a really, really important thing, number 4, that I want to share with you is share it. If it comes up for you, share it with other people, share it with other writers who get it. Like, I've got, I can liken it to, I call them my business besties, but I've got people who when I started in my business, that I've only really been friends with from that journey, because they get it. So we share what we're kind of going through. And no matter whether someone's been doing it for 10 years longer than me, I know that if I share that in that circle of people who get it, I often get mirrored back to me. It's okay. Yeah, I had that happen last year. That came up for me. Don't suffer in silence. Don't suffer on your own. And sometimes just having a sounding board and expressing what's coming up for you, discussing those feelings with somebody, it gives you a relief, and you often get a different perspective given back to you. Because we're good at that, aren't we? Sometimes we have the blinkers on and we look at it in that way. Whereas I liken it, my analogy, my visual kind of representation of a different perspective is, if we walked out of our houses and took a picture of exactly what was out of that front door, and then we walked out the front door, and I mean, depending on what we all live in here, there might be different kinds of houses, apartments, whatever. You go out your door, you walk 10 meters to the left, you turn around and you take a picture of the exact same space. It's not going to look the same. The picture is it. We're going to see probably the car that was behind the tree, or we're going to see a door that we didn't see from down there. Like, this is the thing. A different perspective is so, so important when we find ourselves struggling with these common mindset blocks. So reach out to your community. And if you don't feel like you've got a community, find one, because they're out there. There are writers groups, networking opportunities, places that you can go, environments where you can be surrounded by people that are like you and get it and can help to support you through that. Okay. Any questions on imposter syndrome at all as we go so far? Just keep an eye on time, you know, because I'm like, there's so much more we could say here, but hopefully that's giving you a bit of food for thought. And hopefully if you are experiencing that, and what I'll say when, because if you haven't, it's going to come up at some point as you reach to your amazing heights of your success, it will probably flare up and go, hello, we haven't experienced this before. So just, know you can. I like to think of it as a toolkit. Like, I want you to all feel like you've got this toolkit, and you can kind of select some of these strategies that I'm sharing with you out of that to help you to deal with it when it comes up. So number 1, imposter syndrome. I'm going to move now on to a really interesting area. It's limiting beliefs. Okay. So an example of a limiting belief might be, I'm not good enough to do that. My work isn't good enough. I'm too old to do that. I'm too young to do that. I'm never going to be able to achieve X, Y, and Z because I'm this type of person. These phrases are examples of limiting beliefs, and limiting beliefs, I think they're an excuse for us to not achieve what we want to achieve. They're a part of us that holds us back from reaching for like the sky and reaching for like, and I'm sure you've all got your own idea of what ultimate success looks like for you. And there's probably a part of you that at the same time goes, no, you're not going to do that. No, too much, too big, come back down a peg, come back down. And to try and pull you back down to somewhere, oh, it's more realistic or believable. And literally that is based around these limiting beliefs. They keep you in your comfort zone. They keep you where they know where you've been before, where it's nice and safe and secure. They can greatly, greatly limit your development, both personally and professionally. And these thoughts, whether you're conscious of them or they're just kind of there hovering around unconsciously, like if we're not conscious of our limiting beliefs, basically, we're thinking that they're true, and we're kind of acting out and doing things in our day-to-day based on them. And I know if you've never even heard of this concept of a limiting belief before, it can be quite confronting. I remember when I did my coach training and we started talking about them, and I was like questioning everything that I'd ever learned before. I was like, oh my God, is that a limiting belief? Have I created that? Where's that come from? So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed with this concept. All I want you to do is really just start maybe questioning when you say no or yes to an opportunity or something. If you deep down know, like I said, about that vision, that thing that kind of excites you, that limiting belief's the thing that's pulling you back down and saying no. That part of you that says, no, we're not safe to do that. No, that's too big of a goal. No, what would they say? I'm not that kind of person. All those types of things. And the really sad thing about it is when it comes to limiting beliefs, they've often come from a place where someone has told you or something's happened that has told you that you weren't enough or you weren't okay to do that. Often there is a voice that isn't even our own. It's a voice that's coming from, maybe somewhere back in the past, childhood, a parent, a bully at school, like someone who has had a negative impact in your life has kind of imprinted said limiting belief on you. And guess what? We then carry that with us for the rest of our lives and make decisions based on those set of beliefs. So for example, ways that we can look to really overcome and to move forwards with these so we can excel in our author careers and we can climb to those heights that we know we really want to get to, is we have to identify them. So we can't overcome anything unless we have the awareness to be able to identify it. And if you're wondering, well, how the hell do I start to pick apart my belief system? If you're not already doing something like this for your self-development, journaling is a really, really great tool to start thinking about some of those beliefs. Like even just writing pen to paper. I mean, as we are authors and writers here, this probably, I'm saying maybe you already do journal, I'm not sure, but if you don't, a blank piece of paper and a pen, and just to start thinking about, what do I believe is true about myself and what I can achieve? Like just writing down, what do I think is possible for myself? And then start thinking about the reasons that come up as to why you can't do that. And then to look at them and say, is this the truth? Or is it what I perceive, what I think about myself? Because the two are really different. It's all perception, isn't it? It's all what we choose to say to ourselves. It's all about that internal dialogue and conversation that's happening within us at any one time. So step one is identifying the belief. The second one is a great one because it's recognizing, well, hey, that's just a belief. That is just a belief. And it's not a fact. Fact and belief are two very, very different things. So that's really empowering actually when we can say, hey, I might have kind of lived by that belief, but it's not a truth. It's all that it is. It takes the power out of it. And the third part I'd like you to think about is challenging it. So saying, now we've recognized that this is a belief that we have. How can you, and I'll give you some examples of how you can start challenging this belief. So what are the supporting facts? What tells me that this belief is true? Have I always thought this way? Or is it based on a particular scenario, a particular event that might have happened, something that someone said to me at some point? Is there evidence to support this belief? And I love this one. What would it be like to think the opposite to what my belief says? Just playing with it. What would it be like, for argument's sake, what would it be like to think the complete opposite? And how does that make me feel? And leaning into that. Another question, is my belief helping me to progress towards my goals, or is it hindering me from reaching for what I really want to do? That opportunity that kind of excites me and scares me in equal measure. Also, excitement, fear, pretty much the same thing. You've just kind of got to lean into the one and know that those emotions are so similar. Fear and excitement. So asking ourselves those questions about the beliefs. And I know some of these questions might seem a bit strange to ask yourself, but honestly, they're designed to help you just broaden your perspective on this outside the box type of thinking. And it gets really interesting as well. Because ultimately everything you do in your life, and you are doing and you have done up to this very point, has been based off of that belief system. It's kind of the foundations of who you are. We call it in NLP like a map of the world. And we've all, even though our maps of the world might be kind of similar, they're fundamentally like 100% unique. We haven't all experienced the same thing, relationships, experiences. It's really, really unique. So yeah, this is a great, great self-development tool that you can have in your kit. Okay, so the next thing is, and this is not an overnight process, but adopting a new belief is so empowering. You can literally choose a belief and choose that you want to believe in something. But then the transition, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be overnight. You really have to want to act on this belief too. So when you're not just saying, I believe that I can do this, what are you doing to support that? Like, what action are you taking? For example, you might have always had a belief that I'm not a kind, I'll use me as an example. Mine used to be, I'm really shy, can't do that, no, I'm really shy. And I kept saying it to myself again and again and again, and I would never push myself out my comfort zone to do something where I had to use my confidence muscle. That's all it is. It's a muscle, right? And the more that we put ourselves in those scenarios where we have to use it, the more we can grow that and expand it. So my actions I took to instill my new belief, which is I am a confident person, is putting myself in scenarios where, guess what, I had to be confident. It doesn't mean it didn't come without fear and discomfort and yeah, but you can still do it. Like, we can still do scary things. We can do things that terrify us. We're a lot stronger, braver, and courageous than we give ourselves credit for, definitely. So there we go. We are limiting beliefs. Okay, we're doing good for time. Good. Hopefully it's okay, ladies. And again, please feel free. I might just pause and ask now if anyone has got any questions or reflections or just a thumbs up or anything, really, just so I know you're all okay. Good. Yeah, fab. Good stuff. Okay, perfect. All right then, so we will move on then, I think, to scarcity versus abundance mindset in writing. Another biggie, I think, this one. So things like, I'm never going to stand out, no one's going to buy my book. Like, let's just say you've just published a book, or you've just decided to start like offering the writing services, like whatever stage that you're at, tuning into where your thoughts are at when that happens. So are my thoughts negative or positive? Like, do you find yourself focused on worries, fears, doubts? Do you find yourself thinking about positive things? Like, are you grateful and focused on all the good stuff that's going to happen? Or are you kind of finding yourself in self-doubt land? Because it's really important that we're aware of which kind of side that we lean more towards. So for an example, the scarcity versus abundance mindset, I'll give you some examples of phrases that we might be thinking if we're in either. So scarcity is things like, I don't like to collaborate. Abundance, great things come when we work together with other people. Scarcity mindset, what's it going to cost? What's the price going to be? Abundance mindset, investment equals like return on investment and getting something back from that. Scarcity mindset, I really fear competition. That scares me. I don't like having competition. Abundance mindset, competition drives quality and creativity. Another thing is scarcity mindset, nobody can do it like I can. And then the abundance mindset is kind of the, let the best man or woman win. Like, it's just really like thinking about how you want to feel when you think about the eventualities and situations that are going to come from your author career. Now, scarcity mindset is very, very prevalent. My experience and in my research with many writers. it's easy for you, I think, to be able to focus on many possible scenarios that haven't happened yet, that will lead us to feel like we don't have enough, there's not enough. When we feel this way, we can start to, has anyone experienced that kind of desperation energy when we're feeling a bit like, you know, I mean, this approach, it continues to feed that scarcity mindset. So it's kind of either thinking that there's not enough, and there's not enough for anyone, there's not enough for me, and versus really being like, anything's possible, and I believe and trust and know that my people are out there, and I'm ready to for them to find me, and to really serve them with my storytelling, or with my fiction, with my non-fiction. So shifting from a scarcity to abundance mindset. Now, there's a few examples, particularly with writing, I wanted to share. And again, if you resonate with these, please let me know in the chat box. So when you write something, and it gets, let's say, like an average response, you can be grateful for the response, or you can feel really let down and tell yourself that you failed and it's not good enough. So an abundance mindset in this scenario will tell you there are more people out there that want and need the story that you've created. It's just a matter of finding more people. And that's the thing, abundance, there are always more people. There's always more. There's no cap, there's no limit to that. And that's why I think thinking abundance mindset in action here is really great. And also, what about if a potential client, let's say, like low balls you for like a writing gig or a writing project that you have, you can say thank you for the opportunity and then pass on it, knowing that something better is always going to come along. Abundance mindset, something better is always there, something good is always coming my way, is a choice to believe that. And let's be honest, which one feels better? Something good's always going to happen, and something good's always coming my way, versus, oh, why is this happening to me? Oh God, oh no. And it's kind of retracting and being like, oh, it's too much, versus cool, you know, let's embrace it, all of it. Abundance mindset is telling you better work's out there, and better work is coming your way, better opportunities, collaborations, all of the good stuff. For me, actually, like regardless of my notes, really, I think a good way for me to share really how I feel about abundance mindset is it's the feeling of being excited. You know, when you're excited about something that hasn't happened yet, and there's no proof that the thing is going to happen, it's just feeling excited, and feeling like anything's possible for you. Like it's like a magical feeling, really, a magical insight. Sorry, I'm a little bit woo, so I've tried to keep not too much woo tonight. Let's have a look. Tricia said, I'm having to head out for dinner to say thank you and see you soon. You're very welcome, Trish. Thank you so much for letting us know. And thank you for coming along. So in summary, I think whether you decide to view yourself as a struggling writer or author, or a growing writer or author, there's a bit of a difference between the two. And I just want you to feel into the energy of those. Like, scarcity is not a fun place to be or live in, and it is a choice. It's a choice. You can work on this. This is mindset, and that's the most fat. And I know I get very excited about mindset, but it's really because each one of you, like, it's one thing, and probably the only thing, if I'm honest, that's completely in your control. It's one thing that you can work on. It's something you can develop, you can expand, and your kind of life and your author careers and everything you do is going to be an extension of what happens here, because we can't create anything if we don't think it or vision it first. It'd be like getting in the car and trying to drive to a location without having the sat nav or direction, and we're just kind of like like it's knowing, visualizing, and feeling like we're going, something good's happening here, and I'm really excited about it. So let's have a look where we're at. So another thing that I would love to share before we move on to the fear of judgment is, so remember that when you approach your writing from a more abundant place, you are going to create more abundance. Abundance equals more abundance, more opportunities. You can be more creative. You will not fear collaboration. You won't fear someone else winning or someone else's massive success. meaning you've lost anything, you'll start to be inspired, like total inspiration, rather than what's the opposite of that? Rather than feeling comparison, you'll see it as inspiration and not anything that takes away from you and where you're at all. So yes, starting to think about maybe on the back of this one, where are you, and where are you feeling like which kind of camp that you'll find yourself in, and how can you maybe start to expand into that growth mindset where just anything's possible for you. So we're going to finish the mindset piece of this workshop with the fear of judgment. I see Helen's got a question, and I'm going to just flick over into the chat box. What tips do you have for growing, expanding, maintaining that motivation and feelings of excitement? Great question. So personally for myself, it's an ongoing thing. Like, it's a daily thing that you have to do. We don't all wake up, jump out of bed in the morning and feel like, yes, I can't wait to go and attack the day today. So some things that I like to do personally, I find having a morning routine really helps. I have half an hour to 45 minutes at the start of each day where I do not wake up and scroll this actually goes in a different room. And you might think, what's this got to do with developing your growth mindset? But honestly, I pick my journal up. I have a 15-minute write of like how I want to feel, what my intention is for that day, for that week, for that, like reminding myself what I'm getting up and working towards, reminding myself of my goals. And then for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I've only been doing this for the past year, and I have to say it's kind of changed my life, is like guided meditation. And guess what? They're all for free over on YouTube. So if you want to like instill more confidence or develop your growth mindset, they have meditations that are there to support you with that. And they are incredible. And I promise you, if you can give yourself half an hour to 45 minutes, think of it as like priming yourself, like you're priming yourself for the type of person you want to be, the type of day that you want to have. It makes all the difference, because you go into that day focused, confident, excited. You're setting the tone then for everything else that's going to play out that day. And the day doesn't happen to you, like you set the scene, you set yourself up really for success, I feel. So yeah, that's one thing that I would say. Morning, Helen, that's Helen. I do morning pages most mornings. Yes, I love this. Julia Cameron recommends them as a kind of writerly meditation, journaling really, 3 pages of A4 handwritten. I love that. There's so much power, isn't there, in like putting pen to paper and just letting it flow. I love that.
It does clear your head. You know, I find if I don't do it now, I really notice that I'm much more sort of anxious and whatever. So I do feel it does help.
I love that. I feel like it's almost like brain dumping sometimes. Yeah. I don't know if anyone's into Harry Potter, but this, again, I have weird visual like analogies. Yes, I knew it. Another thing in common. Very Potter fans. So this like visual analogies, help me to describe certain things. So with brain dumping and journaling, you know, Dumbledore has like that big bowl where all of his thoughts and things and everything, and he just gets the wand and just selects it out his head and puts it in the bowl. That's what journaling does for me. It's like, it's out my head, I've put it onto paper, and it's kind of unjumbled everything that goes on in here, meaning that I've given myself like a cleaner and clearer slate rather to then progress forward through the day. So emptying the mind, because it's very loud, isn't it, sometimes, especially like as creatives, we have a lot going on at any one time. So it's just helping you to prime yourself for the day that you would like to have. And Helen says 3 pages. Yeah, it's a lot, but I love that. And I love that that's a behavior and a habit that you've created. So
it takes about 25 minutes, half an hour to do it. I know it's quite a long time, but anyway, that's why I don't do it every morning, but most mornings I do.
And that's a great point, actually. Oh, sorry, Helen.
So do you keep them all, and then I do. So what sort of, do you ever like put them all together and kind of go, oh wow, look how far I've come, or like, do you like, how do you?
Yeah, you're not supposed to reread them sort of straight away. You know, you don't reread what you wrote yesterday or the day before. So I just, once I've got a book full, an A4 book, then I put it to one side, and maybe 6 months later I might read through.
Oh, cool.
And then if there's anything in there, like sometimes if I've got an idea for writing, whatever, I might just scribble that down. So if there's anything like that in there, obviously I pull it out, and then I just get rid of the rest, really, because it's just, mostly it's just me going, I'm really tired. You know, things like, because you can put anything, you know, any old rubbish, because no one sees it. It's just for you.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. It's yeah, no one else is going to see it other than you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, actually, because I often get asked, are we meant to keep them? Are we meant to keep the pieces of paper? I'm like, well, it's up to you. I have some clients that like to write down like all of the things they want to let go of, and then they go and burn it, and like burn, and like it's quite a ritual of getting rid of that. But for me, I personally like to keep all of my journals. I keep them all in like a box upstairs, because when I do it, I really like to get into, like, I'm a really, really good visualizer. So I know exactly what, like, the thing that, how I want to feel and what's going to be happening when I have reached the level of success that I want to. And maybe the goalposts always move, don't they? But if we, again, I'm putting that address into my sat nav, and I know what I'm working towards. And honestly, I found a journal from about 3 years ago the other day, and I opened it and it blew my mind, because some of the stuff I was writing about that I didn't even really know, I was like, I think that I want to, you know, just things that have happened, you know, in my career now, and how I'm showing up, and who I am as a person, who I wasn't then. It's just, you can really get quite daring when you write in a journal, because it's just you who reads it. So if you want to write something that you'd feel so fearful to share with someone else, like that goal's too big, it's too much, you can put that in a journal, because it's safe and it's yours. So yeah, I think it's a good place for you to just write anything that you want, and know that it's your kind of safe space to express that as well. It's quite powerful. So yes, brilliant. So we'll move on then to our fourth and final part of the mindset conversation this evening, and that is around writing and the fear of judgment. Okay, so we're going to talk about judgment, judgment from others and judgment from ourselves. So it's kind of like a two-part thing, really, here. And I think it's important to note that if you're going to put your words onto a page, you're going to put your words out there into the world, someone's going to judge you. Someone's going to judge you. And that can be quite scary and confronting, I know. But I want us to start off just with accepting that, by being brave enough to put yourself out there, just know that someone's going to judge you, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. And we're going to work through kind of different ways to think about judgment, and how you can deal with it better to not stop you from excelling and really stepping into like your true author brand, and your like fulfilling your ultimate potential as an author, as a writer. Okay. So let's explore first, like what do we mean by the fear of judgment? Okay, so this could look like a feeling of like, I can't write that, I can't write this, I can't think like that. Why am I thinking like this? Like, what are people going to think of me if I put this out in the world? I mean, I know this very much depends on what genre we write and what kind of style of writing, what kind of whether it's fiction, non-fiction. I know that's going to be quite individual to you, but it could also be things like, what are my loved ones going to think of me? What's my partner going to think? My boyfriend, my girlfriend, my mother-in-law, friends. Then what will people think that I've never met me going to think of me based on this work, based on my writing? Like, all of these things are a fear of judgment, a fear of what other people think. And then the third part to it is what we will ourselves think. Okay, 2. The thing is, there are things inside of you that you need to let out when you write. Okay, so, and I think the most powerful writing sometimes can come from the subconscious, right? The things that we press down in normal life, the things that we wouldn't necessarily say in a polite conversation with someone, maybe things that our friends and family don't even know about us. Like, that's the magic that can happen, I think, when we choose to really express ourselves onto paper. Again, it's where the magic happens. And I think separating that from maybe the what's the word that I'm looking for, like the toned down version, or maybe the polite version that we present ourselves as socially and interaction, you can be the truest form of yourself when you write. Okay. And I want us to now really think about, how do we deal with that fear that comes up around judging? The first thing I want for us to remember is, your book isn't you. I know that it's an expression of you and it's very connected to who you are, but if someone doesn't like your book and someone doesn't like your work that you've put out, it doesn't mean that they don't like you. It doesn't mean they're judging you as a person. And I know and understand this can be really hard to separate those two, but it does get better, I think, the more that you write, the more that you put out there in the world, the more you actually put yourself out to receive judgment. If you have one book and one book only, I'm guessing you're probably going to feel really emotionally connected to that, more so than if you've put out multiple pieces of writing out into the world. I'm just going to check the chat box. Maria, hello. I've had a bit of a judgment over my work. Like, how can I be a scientist when I write about spirituality subjects such as meditation and aromatherapy? Thank you so much for sharing that, Maria. And this is interesting because I think it actually links back to what Helen was saying earlier as well in the branding part, as in, we often get so scared that we are going to be like judged. We can't have these different multi kind of parts to our brand. So again, thinking about, if you are, so what type of scientist are you, just out of interest, so I can get more of an idea here. And also thinking about if you're writing about spirituality subjects such as meditation and aromatherapy, what do you worry that the conflict would be there for you? A neuroscientist, oh wow, that's so interesting. Okay, so what's your worry around that judgment? And Helen, if you can as well, like, please feel free if you anything in terms of that branding conversation here that would be relevant. But
I think it's interesting that Maria said this, because her book is actually, I think because she's a scientist, it adds a level of credibility and differentiation from other books that focus on aromatherapy, for example, because those people, so for example, if a aromatherapist has written about aromatherapy, then that's cool, of course it is. But if you've got a neuroscientist writing about aromatherapy, that's so different that it makes it stand out more. And also, you can be an expert in more than one thing, and you can know enough to be an expert in more than one thing. And I don't think you get more expert than a neuroscientist. So I just feel like, I personally, like, first of all, own what it is that your thing is. So whether it's that you're a children's fiction writer and you just love engaging with children and getting them to read and be creative, or whether it's that you're a neuroscientist and you're smashing it in your career and you're also massively spiritual. I mean, how many scientists actually probably are spiritual as well? They're too scared to admit it because it kind of goes against what they're supposed to be. So there's like an expectation and a sort of bravery around the fact that you are owning who you are and what you do. And actually that as a brand is, I think, like I say, that's way stronger to be spiritual scientist than it is to be aromatherapy expert writing about aromatherapy, because that's not that different.
I think that's great. And also when you were saying that, Helen, it just made me think, really, this kind of goes back to limiting beliefs, because who's made a rule that we can't be spiritual and be a neuroscientist and do this? Like, a lot of that judgment piece often comes from because we think that we're supposed to X, Y, and Z based on someone else's belief system. So yeah, I actually love what you said, like actually owning that's what makes you different. Like, that's something that can make you stand out actually in what it is that you do. So yeah, that's
Can I just interject as well that science often backs up spirituality just a little bit later, so they don't always say different things. I love it when science suddenly proves something that people are talking. I think that's happening more and more. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think people are starting to see the connection more and being open to the connection more. So, you could argue that you're ahead of the times on this, but actually that's kind of when you are building something, that's kind of where the place you want to be, isn't it? Yes, you are going to then get some skeptics and stuff, but you can get some skeptical people who judge over other things as well. It's not just, over the most basic of things. So I think, as both Alex and I have said, there's always that danger of judgment. But as I said, and I know I said it flippantly, but it's true, if you haven't had a bad review or someone's sort of moaning about your work, it just hasn't reached as many people as it should yet. It will happen. And it's just about dealing with it with all this amazing tricks and tips that Alex has shared.
I'd elaborate on the bad review one. It actually was a conversation I was having the other day, and I had a client who was just distraught about having these, that, it wasn't really trolling, but let's say some haters who'd raised a negative word or two. And I just said, look, I think if you haven't got haters, then you're not successful enough. Like, you should welcome them. Like, it means that you're doing something right. You're putting yourself out there. People know about you. And the age-old thing is, honestly, if we think about ourselves and how, and would we ever say anything like that? I find that hateful comments that are not constructive, that are literally coming from a place of negativity, it's often because you are triggering something in that person that maybe they're not doing themselves, something they're not happy with in their life. And I think anyone who has the tenacity to chase their dreams and put themselves out there in the world, whether that's in whatever they do, but especially as an author, putting even the tenacity to sit and write a book and to share that, not everyone's going to do that in their lifetime. So just remember that as well. There's always someone who, will tear you down from a place of being maybe quite sad about their life not being quite as exciting. So basically, welcome the haters. You're doing something right, I feel, if you attract them.
We get our first haters, guys. We are actually over time now, Alex, by 3 minutes, so we're going to have to wrap it up, I'm afraid. But has anyone got any questions they want to ask now based on that amazing amount of information?
I knew I'd struggle to squidge it all in.
Brilliant. It was. I've made notes.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, ladies. Thank you. I loved it.
I'm aware that everyone probably has other stuff they need to go and run off and do now, because we have taken lots of good time. But if you do have any questions at any point, you're obviously very welcome to get in touch with us, and we will do our best to answer them. And we are obviously working together a lot more over the coming months. So we're putting together various things, including a 3-month and a 6-month branding coaching program. So if you do want any help with the whole kind of brand building, working your way through the 10 C's, working your way through all the different mindset writer's blocks and things, then we have a program that's going to basically have a group of people all helping each other along. There's going to be accountability meetings, there's going to be coaching sessions, there's going to be practical advice around and actually implementation around development of logo, aesthetics, social media, everything. So we've got it all in place if you want help. But I do feel from tonight you've probably got enough to get on with, hopefully. And I do feel like the best place to start is just to start. So don't feel like, oh, well, this is great, but I'm not going to now do anything. I think just have a think about what it is that you want to take from that, whether it's that you work on some of the limiting beliefs, whether it's that you work on looking at who you want to connect better with. Maybe it's trying to collaborate with someone and just sending that first DM or that first email to somebody, a bookshop near to you, or another author who does something similar but not quite the same, and you think, do you know what, it'd be cool to do something together. Alex and I had only met about 4 months ago, so and then now we're working together and stuff, so collaboration can result in really fun things happening. So I'm glad that this was helpful. Thank you, Maria, for your feedback.
Thank you.
The idea genuinely is to kind of empower you to feel that you can do what you want to do, and whether that is to destigmatize mental health, whether it's to create a best-selling book, whether it's to launch another book and just keep writing and do the thing that you love, which you obviously all just love writing and that's your thing. Whatever it is, please believe that you can do it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And if anyone does troll you or become a hater, then just remember what Alex said, that you haven't made it until you've got your first troll. So I feel like we're all going to be seeking one of those now to feel justified in our existence. No, I'm joking. Thank you very much, Alex, for being an amazing part of this evening. Really, really interesting. A lot of what you said really resonated with me, and I really didn't know a lot about the whole abundance versus scarcity mindset thing, so I found that really interesting. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Alice and Linda and Sally and Helen and Natalie and Katie and Maria and Clara, for joining us. It was lovely to have your company this evening, and thank you for choosing to spend your evening with us.
Did you want to?
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Boomerang.
Bye.
Yeah, we can do a video, a little photo rather.
What, a little boomerang? Sorry, everyone. I just thought it's while we're here. Okay, I'll take it. I'll make it quick. Okay, ready? Do something fun. Like 1, 2, 3. Oh, perfect. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very much,
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.